Hi, I'm Estefano Ramirez, co-founder of Tonsma and host of the Web3 Growth Podcast. Welcome to our first Web3 community episode, where we'll discuss how to build and retain a Web3 community with our very own Lukas Macner from Ahoy Connect. Welcome, Lukas. How's it going?
Thank you. It's going great. How's it going with you?
All good, all good. Looking forward to going to Denver. But yeah, so give us a little intro about yourself then, about your background and sort of what got you to Web3.
Absolutely. So I'm Lukas, growth manager at Ahoy Connect. And before, in the past 7 years, I used to work in SaaS, and that has been a great time. And then I joined Ahoy Connect actually last year. And so we actually help Web3 builders get more visibility into their followers and how they actually activate their community, right? So we typically would work with CMOs and community managers. And yeah, it's actually because we found out that everywhere, even Web3, Web2, CMOs have it tough because a lot of them actually come from the Web2 world and their Web3 stack has not evolved. So that's kind of the people that we serve, and happy to be here.
It's interesting what you guys are building because so we use it ourselves, obviously, disclaimer. So I use it myself, and it's brilliant, all the insights that you can get from the tool itself. I mean, it's definitely helped us position certain campaigns and understand how our community thinks as a collective entity, I guess. But yeah, so on that topic, tell us a little bit of Ahoy Connect, exactly what you guys do, and sort of what can marketers and CMOs get out of the tool.
Sure. So pretty much a lot of these marketers and a lot of community managers actually come maybe from Web2 world, but the Web3 stack hasn't really evolved. And we see that a lot of the times the classic marketer or community managers bouncing all over the place, trying to maybe find usage, help users, and engage them with, let's say, juicy Twitter posts, giveaways, ambassador programs, or some random challenges. But they don't actually really know what sticks, right? So what we do is we brought all that community data under one roof and then show what the community is actually doing. So what is the community health? What are the community KPIs? And then help them to answer those pressing questions, even how is everyone feeling? What are the hot topics in the community? And who are my loyal ambassadors, right? So that's kind of what we do. We help answer all those questions about KPIs and any questions that the CMO and the CM might have.
Yeah, one of my favorite features is definitely knowing, highlighting and identifying who are your most fervent community members and what people think about certain topics, because you have that keyword feature, don't you? Which is pretty cool.
Exactly.
And I guess another cool feature is how granular you can get specifically with Discord, which is pretty cool.
Which, let's be honest, you sit on that data, on that Discord data and on that Telegram data and on the Twitter data, but you cannot really filter through it yourself. So that's unfortunate, and kind of that's where we come in. We do even more advanced than Discord analytics and so forth.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. But enough shilling of the tool. Let's talk about Web3 community, which is what the people want to hear about.
Absolutely.
So how do you actually start a Web3 community in your eyes?
Yeah. So something that I always love to challenge communities on is just to be more thoughtful, right? So I really think of, for example, a concept from product management, whereas every product manager will work towards a North Star, right? Or even in marketing organizations or sales organizations, would be revenue or whatnot. So even in community, to have a North Star. So, and to be more thoughtful about community in general, I would say, because a lot of the times, at least what I've seen in the past years, CMs are responsible a lot of times for just vibes, which is really not good enough if you're a community manager, because that means you're not really thoughtful. And that means that you're probably going to lose your job if you're not really thinking of how your job will impact, let's say, marketing metrics or partnership metrics or usage and so forth. So that's just not good enough. I would start by being very thoughtful and look at the North Star metrics that you want to hit as a community manager. That's pretty much what I would focus on. And then that also manifests differently. Within, for example, layer one, you might have different, let's say, developer engagement metrics that you might want to be focusing on. And also, if you're an NFT collection, then let's be honest, you might be even thinking more short-term or maybe long-term. So to kind of set up a North Star metric and then work towards it as a community manager.
I definitely agree with that. I think one of the things that what you've highlighted is being thoughtful. But if we sort of dig deep into that, what does that like being thoughtful actually mean? And I think for me is actually understanding who your target audience is and how to convert those into sort of community members. Because more often than not, and Web3 is plagued with this sort of issue, is you get community members who shouldn't really be part of your community because they're not there to contribute. They're just there to extract value. So yeah, you have to sort of be really, really thoughtful as to who you're kind of, obviously you don't want to gatekeep your community, but like know who you're targeting, know who you want to attract, so they become a valuable member of your community.
Yeah, and I would even challenge like to go, as you said, just a bit deeper on that, to find those North Star metric, or what is like to actually do a full audit on your community, right? So, for example, sure, everyone kind of starts at different levels of community. You know, you have projects that like just slap a Discord on, and then they actually start taking it seriously at like 500 members or 1,000 members. But then like actually audit even those 500 and 1,000 members. So like, what are the growth levers, and then like double down maybe on that. Like, what are my most engaged posts previously? What do people actually really like, right? And obviously, like not every single community is the same, so everyone just like needs to be curious and dig deeper into that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super important. What are some of like, okay, let's say for like an NFT collection who is maybe a blockchain gaming NFT collection, what would you say are sort of the North Star metrics that you would look into?
So the North Star metric there, for example, would be what is my activity rate, right? So for example, the activity rate in especially crypto gaming can also reflect a lot of the time the product usage. So I would focus on that one.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's sort of what we kind of do with the games that we look after at the moment. So we've got obviously the 3 games, and it's something that we're sort of using to see how, basically just to not just look at how popular the game will be or how good it is, but also to sort of feed product development and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's why I say it's so important to be so thoughtful about this North Star, because like some games are actually in like pre-launch, or even some tokens and some layer ones and projects are pre-launch, and there you're going to actually want to focus more on the qualitative stuff, right? Not on the hard metrics, right? So for example, we work with companies that have over 500,000 Discord members, and they really want to know then the metrics. So like, what is my month-on-month growth? For example, what are my KPIs and how can I increase those KPIs? But for example, a project that is super early, you might be focusing on the keywords. What are the vibes in the community in a way, or what is the sentiment and how can I double down on that sentiment, right?
So you go from being like a vibe guy and focusing on the qualitative to then once you get to a certain growth, then you start looking at the metrics and start looking at, okay, what matters to my community and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess like in a way, maybe it would be interesting to equate this to like even a startup funding, right? Like at C stage, you're trying to find your product market fit, and then at Series A, you put on the engines, and then you put like Salesforce on marketing, because you found what sticks, and kind of maybe similar is to find like there's like community market fit, right? Where maybe at seed stage, you're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, what growth levers, and then just like once you found that, just go with it and accelerate it and focus on the tiny metrics, maybe the KPIs that will get you, more usage and so forth. So who knows?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So on that note, what would you say are the essential pillars of building a community?
I think like a community manager tends to be like a, maybe people might kill me for saying this, but like a mass marketer in a way. A lot of times, of course, like sometimes actually community management means more support and so forth. But I would say, especially in Web3, it's very similar to being a good marketer. So like being authentic, creating even good content. So like even committing to a social calendar, to post consistently, whether it be Twitter Spaces and so forth. And then I would say like listening and being really thoughtful to the community. So like an example of that I can think of is Nathan James, director of DevRel at EOS. Just when you look at this guy's Twitter, he just like only asks questions, and there's like everyone has to kind of find their style. But ultimately, I would say like people really will remember you for being thoughtful, for helping people on their projects, and not really saying GM in the morning, to be honest with you. So I think it's like everyone probably has their own secret sauce, and you can or like their own energy inside a community. So I would also focus on that, where like what is the energy that you want to be showing in your community, and then hire people that are exactly like that. You probably know it yourself. There are communities that are just like very hype, airdrops, everything. So it's like, maybe if that's what you want, then you actually hire maybe those type of people. But for example, there are also really academic communities of Web3 builders and developers that really take their time to actually experiment with it. They flesh out the use cases actually with the layer one and everything. So actually hire people for that. So I would say, yeah, to be authentic, be consistent with good content, and then be super curious, listen to people, and to be very thoughtful.
I definitely agree with all those points. I think you've given me some food for thought in the sense that communities have personalities, and so you should optimize for that personality. And it's very interesting because I think this obviously depends on the type of project that you have. So, for example, there is, and the personality of the founders as well.
Yeah,
so there
absolutely.
are definitely serious projects out there that are building really good, interesting products. But then you look at their community and it's all like a bunch of degens and it's all a bunch of like GMs and stuff like that. But I guess that's because it comes from the founder's personality. There's a guy on LinkedIn that I follow. He's super technical. He's called like the blockchain Gandalf. I forgot his name, but he's super technical and he knows how to sort of be really technical and also be very witty. And I look at his sort of LinkedIn and the community that he attracts, and it's sort of like similar people in a way. And it's true, just like optimize for the personality, be yourself, be authentic, obviously, because people can really see through people that obviously don't have any authenticity. And sometimes it's kind of difficult to find your authenticity when you're building a community as well. But I guess it just goes through trial and error.
I would even like go further and saying that just build a really good product. Like it's like the same as it's like when a lot of the time projects say, hey, we need to build a community. Let's just slap on a community on our product and then we'll grow our usage. Like ultimately your community will be a product of your product. Like just build a great product and then you'll be fine, and then you'll find those people that are so excited about it, right? So it's like then that's maybe then the increased pressure on communities, like feedback, all the product feedback that you have from the community, just to make it more relevant, just to make the product more relevant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like without a good product, you're just not going to get anywhere. And it's interesting because there's a few people that I've spoken to that say that, you know, people shouldn't really focus on community until you have something to show for it. And yeah, I think I agree with that note that you should definitely focus on providing a product, a valuable product, finding product market fit, and then like doubling down. Once you find product market fit and you've proven the concept and stuff like that, then doubling down on sort of like growing your community and growing your audience and that sort of thing. I think one of the things that I'd also like to mention on this point is, so one of our colleagues, Peter Gavrilov, his name is, he's currently working on a sort of like playbook or like concept of community, and sort of like there's different stages. Like if you think of it like a circle, you captivate and you help attract people, then you nurture them, and then you empower them to sort of cultivate other relationships within the community itself, and you help them sort of build things from your community. And it's a really interesting way of looking at it, because once you achieve all those sort of pillars, let's call them, that's when your community starts thriving. That's when your community starts sort of like growing itself in a way, which is really interesting. But let's move on to another question. So you've built a small community and it's growing. How do you retain them?
I think on that point, like also what you were talking about, Peter's, like I think a lot of people actually don't even create that funnel or don't even think about the whole circle and how that's going to be. So like that's going to be really interesting to build out, and maybe could be even an interesting blueprint for other projects, just to be more thoughtful about and to actually use maybe those Web2 marketing basics of looking at the funnel and kind of what are my community touch points and how do I engage people. But to answer your question, in a way to retain a small community, I think would be interesting to actually maybe don't even fix what's broken, right? So like to actually look at what has worked and keep on being attentive to the community's need. And then as a second priority for that, I would like step back and maybe just once again like audit what do we want our users to actually do. How do we actually want to retain them, right? So like for example, is social media engagement a priority, or like how will that roll up? Is it going to be to leads? If social media engagement actually increases, will this create FOMO, or like what does good engagement look like? How do I want these users to be retained? Do I even want to be like short-term thinking and long-term thinking? Like you have to be honest. Like maybe I just like want to increase the token price at the moment, or maybe I just want them. If you're layer one, you really want to build some solid use cases with, let's say, 5,000 developers in the future. So yeah, I would like really just not fix what's broken, step back, strategize, and then most importantly, the third one being to actually look at your persona. What do they care about, and how do they want to be interacted with, and then do that. And then I think also, to go a bit further, I think there's also some good mechanisms to retain your users. Also, even if you're a small community, I actually recently read about the vested airdrop model. That seems also interesting. Or use, for example, an incentive platform such as crew3.xyz. I think that's a really good one because your users already love you, and then might as well be rewarded for tweeting about you, for mentioning you places, and so forth.
I think from my point of view, oh, sorry if you hear some thumping noise in the background. I've got someone on the roof working on the roof. I have a problem, but anyway, back to the podcast. So when it comes to sort of retaining community, I think it's just sort of like, from my point of view, it's about once you build that relationship, you have to work on that relationship. You have to care after them. You have to find ways for the community to feel that they're part of the product, feel like they're part of the project in itself. So one of the things that we often do is we work with the community to improve the Discord channel. And if to them, it makes them feel like they have power and control, and they're contributing towards something. And what you're actually doing there is you're doing a couple of things. Is first of all, you're improving the experience in your Discord community channels. You're getting your community to work together to develop a product, and yeah, through that it just brings sort of like collaborative activities together, and people start sort of building relationships, interrelationships between each other. So in our own Discord, in the Vemp Discord, Peter is our community manager, so he did an exercise of like, okay, how can we improve the channel? And so there were suggestions made. And then from that, people started like brainstorming without us even like knowing anything. They just like would meet up in the background, have calls and brainstorm how to improve things. Honestly, it was brilliant. But I think that it's just giving the community some sort of responsibility and making them feel like, this is an ongoing thing. One of the things you mentioned is events. I think doing events on a regular basis is very important. One of the things that we're currently trying at Vemp is we are sort of hosting like weekly AMAs, like Ask Me Anything. And that could be anything from the project side, anything from what's going on in the market. Have you watched the last episode of The Last of Us? Yeah. And that's another way of bringing your community closer with each other. And you find a lot about the personality that way as well. Like, we didn't realize how much the human interaction is valued when it comes to sort of like community engagement and that sort of thing. Honestly, like, they made such a big deal about episode, I think it was episode 3 of The Last of Us. It took up like at least 20 minutes of the entire one hour conversation. So those are the sort of things that I would sort of look at doing. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking like it's all about just, I guess, like continuous discovery of your users, right? And like even not even pre-planned, but just like the unplanned interactions that you have, just to dig deeper into what makes them tick, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think are the most common problems Web3 projects have when growing a community?
Yeah, and maybe that's exactly what I was just saying right now, is like, I think a lot actually don't really know like what's going on and are just completely flying blind. And then something that I've observed by being part of different communities and just dabbling and completely from layer 1 to NFT collections to DeFi is actually not focusing enough on the short-term versus long-term fans. So like actually not really retaining users inside the community, not really being thoughtful of if you want to have a, like, if you actually want to engage people on a short or long term. Some people just like slap an ambassador program on it, or do giveaways and airdrop. And so I think the biggest problems for Web3 projects when they're growing a community would be to really not focus whether they want short-term engagement or long-term engagement. So like a lot of the times people just like slap an ambassador program in their community, or just do a giveaway or airdrop, and are just not really thoughtful what they want from the community. Or even like something that I've seen with a lot of projects is they don't have actually this day-to-day community engagement really thought out, and also the strategic bigger roadmap. So for example, when you look at the best projects actually have a kind of like multi-layered community engagement, where from the top line they'll have the founders of, let's say, the layer one, right? Like you have the founder of Near and so forth, really telling you why you should join this community, why you should be part of these great builders, right? And then like kind of mid-level to engage with them on Twitter to get their opinions about the roadmap, and then down at the community, the Discord level, to really be thoughtful about every interaction, to be actually working through the use case with the developers. So I think like a lot of communities struggle to execute on so many levels of this community strategy.
I definitely agree. So I speak to founders and early sort of stage Web3 companies about their communities almost every day and what they can do to improve it and that sort of thing. And I think one of the most common problems that people go through is like they just don't know how to start it. They don't know what the values are. They don't know how to, like you said, there isn't a sort of a structured way of looking at it. And I think what you've answered there, it's a good way of sort of start looking at it. I think another thing is, so that's on the growing stage, early growth anyway. Once you start getting a community, you've successfully grown a community. One of the most common problems I see is founders, specifically founder CEOs, the C-level, the leaders of the project, they often neglect the community. They just leave it to the community manager to sort out. But that's an issue because the more they show their face in the community, the stronger their community gets, and sort of the more they get to know about, the CEO or the founder and that sort of thing. It's one of the problems that Vemp went through in the beginning, where we grew the community to a large size, and then because of obviously how busy it got and everyone just didn't have time to show their faces in the community, we slowly neglected it, and then we just revived it simply by just start showing our faces a bit more, showing the community, what we're doing, that like we care what you think about, and that sort of thing. I think that's another common issue.
And that means like, I guess like the founding team or whoever is that persona who is known for that project has to be really embedded in the marketing team, or like have that sparring partner, whatever you want to call it, to constantly be looped in, and just not too close engagement.
Maybe like a good way of looking at it as well, because obviously founders, they are CEOs, founders, the leaders are obviously in charge of quite complex things.
Yeah.
So instead of showing your face every day, like have set times where you show your face and like book. One of the things I do as the CMO of Vemp, I book myself at least 10 minutes every day in my calendar to just show my face in the community. I just have like chit chat. It's only like 10 minutes, and I think it's good enough, and it shows that you care. And obviously you do care, so that's the reason why you're doing it.
Absolutely. And then like, you, even if you're, let's say, holding a token or you're supporting a project, whether you're buying their NFT, whether you're actually using their technology, like you want to know that when you're using it, you are, for example, working for this person, or this person has actually created the technology, even though, let's say, they might have an engineering team who created, let's say, all of Near Protocol's tech stack or whatever. You still feel that there's humans behind it, right? It's
absolutely
it's necessary.
Absolutely. What metrics should community managers and founders track then?
Yeah, I think
apart from the obvious growth and that sort of thing, engagement.
I think usually you would have actually a founder or head of community or community manager report, hey, we have 50,000 community members. They'll be like, oh, cool, thumbs up. And then actually if you really want to think about this a bit deeper, and let's be honest, if you have some common sense, then you'll know that like out of 50,000, how many are actually engaged, right? So like some of the useful metrics would be activity rate. So like what percentage of my community is actually engaged? We, for example, have seen with some communities that the numbers are rising in terms of total numbers, but then the activity rates are actually declining, right? So you definitely want to know that, because then that helps you prevent disasters down the line. Then another thing is sentiment, and I think sentiment is a lot of times correlated to price in Web3 as well. So like actually having a grip on sentiment and knowing when, how do you say that, shit hits the fan, then it's actually really important to know that too. Where, for example, last week was all positive, and then suddenly like, what's changed there? So sentiment is super important to track. And then what topics do people care about, right? So like what we're talking about that you guys also use. So what are the top keywords?
One of the things this is another common problem that people have is they don't profile the community members based on how they interact with their community and how they interact with their Web3 product. So one of the things that we've understood from managing different projects is you have different types of community members and users. So there are users who believe in your product and want to invest in it with a long-term point of view, and so you need to profile those and interact with them in a different way. So let's say, for example, your typical, the whales, whilst they contribute, they're a valuable member of your community because they're adding value to your ecosystem. You might need to find a way to sort of engage with them, which is totally different to how you engage with your everyday GM guy or your everyday sort of user, let's say. And I think profiling community members is something that people often fail to do. And I think it's something that's difficult to do. Obviously, once you're growing, you don't really look at this sort of stuff. Like when you're just starting, you don't really look at this sort of stuff. You do this like after you have at least, I don't know, like over 5,000 or over 1,000 members that you can sort of get good, valuable data and insights from.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, how many of the CMOs out there do you think actually, let's say, look at their ideal community member persona?
I don't think not many, to be honest. I think you could probably, because of how young our industry is, I don't think there are many CMOs out there that are looking at this sort of stuff. I think the people that are definitely looking at this sort of stuff are most likely the guys that have been in Web3 for a while. But it is something that people should definitely look at because it just helps your marketing, your product development, all that sort of stuff.
Like I find that wild because like if you go today to, let's say, a company like Google or any company, like even I would say even in Web2, and it's one of the first thing that a startup also would do, I guess, in Web2 is like drill down, what is my ICP, what is the ideal customer, what are like, how exactly are we serving them, right? And in a way, every single community member, I guess if they come in, that means they're serious about what you're building, they're curious, they should be treated as ICP as well. I find that also, like, I guess it could be with immaturity of the industry and whatnot, but like that would not be tolerated. If you don't know your ICP in Google, you're fired.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think like these are just basically marketing fundamentals. It's just that you're applying them from Web 2 to Web 3, and you have to think about it differently because obviously in 2, it's okay, who's paying for this service or this product, whereas in Web 3 is kind of like, okay, who's part of my community member? Yes, sometimes they invest, they have an NFT or whatever, but you're looking at it in the same sort of high level point of view of who's your ICP, who do you want to be part of your community, which is a common mistake that founders make, and obviously that they should look at rectifying it. So going back to the questions, do you think cross-community events are a good tactic for community growth?
What do you precisely mean by cross-community events?
So I have a NFT collection or an NFT project, and I'm looking to do a cross-community collaboration with, let's say, either another NFT protocol, or it doesn't even have to be an NFT, just with another community. Do you think, which is a typical tactic that people use in Web3, but do you think it's a good tactic?
Yeah, I guess like the ethos of Web3 is to always collaborate together, to always, share also, when you think about it, customers. So I think if you kind of find those insert buzzword synergies together, then I think it's an absolutely great idea, especially if you can target also, I guess, like what we're talking about, those ICPs of, let's say, a developer will, let's say, need technology A and technology B. We can kind of like bundle that together. I think it's a great idea. Why not?
Yeah, I think it is a good tactic to follow, but more often than not, people are doing it, in my eyes anyway, the wrong way.
Okay. How so?
And so they do it with irrelevant communities. So if I have a product that works for, I don't know, let's say a DeFi product, and then there's this really hot metaverse community that like are really killing it at the moment, and I'm trying to, do a collaboration with them. Unless there's actually like my DeFi product can fit with their metaverse product or vice versa, like there's no point in doing a cross collaboration event, because you're not going to have sticky community members. You're just going to have people that either won't really listen to you, won't really show up, won't really be that bothered, or people that will probably think your price is going to go up so they can sell at a higher price later on. So yeah, that's the only thing that I would mention on that, is just making sure that whatever, any cross sort of community collaboration you're doing, make sure that it's relevant to both your project and the project that you're looking to collaborate with.
Yeah.
So on to the next topic or question. How do you make sure that you're attracting the right people to your community?
Yeah, so I would say it's like to think maybe again on like Web2 fundamentals, like to build the right funnel, right? So like to see what are the community touch points, like how do I want to engage those people? How should the funnel look like? And then to actually just directly ask them, right? Like what do they want more of? And just to be super curious, just to learn about them more and to nail down who is my person, what do they love, how do they want to be interacted with. And the beautiful thing about Discord is like you can literally just like ask the most active person to be like, hey, what do you find cool about this community? Like, what should we do? It's kind of like what you're saying, right? Like you engage with people, talk about Last of Us episode, and that's how you find out.
I definitely agree with that. I think people are forgetting that, all the Web2 tactics and strategies. I hate calling them Web2 because it's just fundamentals that still work. They still
Just marketing stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it still definitely works. I think a good way, if I divide it into someone who's just building the product and trying to capture an audience, I think a good way of going about capturing people is by targeting your approach to other communities and protocols that have a similar product offering that you do. So for example, we are currently working with a DeFi product that is building a sort of like it's not a direct competitor of Curve, which is a DeFi product. It's like an additional tool to Curve. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sort of do like a targeted airdrop and sort of airdrop tokens to those who hold Curve, who are active in the Curve ecosystem, that sort of thing. And I think those sort of growth tactics and strategies for people who are just starting to build a community are sort of good. They work, and it's targeted. I think once you have your community, somewhat of a community, I think you can still use these sort of tactics and strategies, but then you have more of you need to have more of a thoughtful approach, which is something that you've mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, and finding out what makes your community sort of like the personality. And it goes back to the ICP thing, understanding your ideal customer or your ideal community member and sort of targeting campaigns, messaging, all that good stuff towards your ideal community member, I guess.
Yeah, it's a nice summary.
So I guess that takes us to like the ending of the podcast. Is there any advice or comments that you'd like to share for anyone who's looking to build or maintain a community?
I think it's like to kind of summarize what we're talking about is like to be all the time curious, try to find out the most about what makes people tick. And I think if you have that innate curiosity, then like you'll be so fine because you'll actually find out what do people care about, what gets them super excited, like are these the wrong people, where are they coming from down the funnel, how can we kick them out? Like if you're curious about like finding more about your users, you'll be golden. And then to focus, I guess, on the long-term game as well, because I think some of the best things can come out of if you just like focus on your long-term strategy. Sure, there might be dips in the community engagement, but if you have this kind of North Star as well over the course of even a few years, a few months, I think that's the most valuable way to build good community and how to also get, let's say, even the most loyal and engaged users then for your product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I like to end with as well is, see, we have this problem in the crypto market where, in the current market conditions, where we're in a bear market,
Yeah.
there's a lot less eyes on the market, and therefore your audience size decreases. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, this depends a lot on what you're building. So, for example, for us, we're helping on the website anyway. We're helping build blockchain games, and
Cool.
so we're gonna stop using Web3 jargon. We're not gonna use NFTs, crypto, decentralization, none of that stuff. And we're gonna try and focus on growing our communities based on the product rather than the technology. And I feel like people should do more of that in Web3, specifically if you're building something that anyone can use. And if you're building something for developers, for Web3 developers, of course, obviously, like, don't listen to me.
Yeah.
But if you're building something for the masses, for people that are not necessarily, try to do a bit more of that. Try to get community members that are not Web3 natives, and sort of like, you know, try to get them to engage within your ecosystem a bit more. But yeah. Lastly, where can people get in touch with you and find you, Lukas?
Absolutely. So that is on Twitter, preferably at Lukas with a K, and then Macner, Macne, or at Ahoy Connect.
Awesome. Now, I'll finish off with a bit of Ahoy Connect promo because I quite like these guys a lot. If they want to get access to the tool, what's your website?
AhoyConnect.com. So AHOY and then connect.com. So you
Okay,
can just
and
sign up there and then we can get you started.
awesome. So there's a free trial on the website, and I could just sign
Yes,
up.
exactly.
Awesome, perfect. One last thing is, so we're creating a Telegram group with Web3 growth people. We've got some notable founders in there, some growth people from L1s, and just other marketing leaders, Web3 marketing leaders. So if you want to join, send me a DM on Telegram at ZKSteph, and I can get you in.
It's a good crew.
Yeah, Lukas is also part of it. So yeah. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a review on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to, as that really helps the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me as well.